All right, what's up, all you Dash Bashers? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of our speaker series where we're getting to know the speakers that are coming to the Dash Bash. And I'm so excited to have one of those speakers with us today, Aradhana Baharano with Little Labs, the amazing animation studio based out of California. They've got over a decade of experience working on animated content and interactive experiences. She's collaborated with brands such as Disney, Netflix, Google, Snapchat, Meta, and Khan Academy for Kids. I mean, these are all just amazing brands to work with. Aradhana, thanks so much for hanging out with me and chatting with me today.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, I think one good place to start is always kind of at the beginning, because it's fascinating to me how everyone kind of gets into motion design. It's such an amalgamation of different backgrounds and experiences. Maybe you take me back to some of those like early animation memories you had where you were like, oh, this is interesting. Maybe this is a career I might want to pursue.
Yeah, so I grew up in India, and my introduction to animation was sort of in middle school. I love cartoons. I love watching animated films. I was really a nerd and geek about it. But it was one day in my my middle school, in the school library, I came across this animation book, and it was like the only animation book in the library.
And it was just like the one. You just read it over and over again.
It was just the one. Yeah, it was just the one I stumbled on, and the one I would read every day from that point on. And it was perfectly placed for me. And I read it and I was like, oh, like a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, I can actually do this. I love drawing. And it was like the aha moment. And I wasn't necessarily surrounded by people who knew about this. And that book sort of sparked my imagination. And so then I started looking for more information and going to bookstores, and I found the Animation Survival Kit by Richard Williams.
That's a classic. I got a copy in here at the office with me.
Exactly. And it was overpriced in India, so I couldn't afford it at that time with my pocket money. And I didn't want to share it. I wasn't ready to share it with my family because and so I would just visit the store every week and like read politely as much as I could without purchasing it. I want it now. I have a copy and everything.
Nice.
So that was just my earliest memory of like, this is something I can do. It was like, it's like almost perfectly like it was meant to happen. I had to stumble up on that book to like learn about it and like, yeah. And
absolutely. It was serendipitous that you found it at the moment that you did. So it sounds like, there's not at least at the time, wasn't a ton of folks around you in your space and your network who knew much about animation. So you're growing up, you're learning about this stuff, you have this passion for it. And I believe you went to SCAD, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
So was that a big reason that you were like, I need to go check out the US to kind of try to find a path into animation? That's what led you to SCAD?
Exactly. Yeah. There wasn't a ton of schools or colleges around me. There was sort of like media studies, but not really animation specifically. There was a lot of schools to teach you software. So I did all of that while I was in high school. I also learned like Photoshop and all the tools, but not necessarily the foundation to animate. And then it sort of became my goal. I started looking at the US and other colleges just outside of India in general, and SCAD ended up being the one I was the most, it felt like the right place for me, and also needed to be able to afford it. And they offered scholarships. So,
hey, there you go. Good scholarship is also really helpful.
Yeah,
I love SCAD. It's so pretty down there. I mean, I've gone down a few times for co-motion. I think they do
gorgeous.
A great event.
The campus is amazing.
Have you been to Savannah before learning of SCAD? Did you have any idea about
Never
Savannah?
Never been to the U.S. before I came here. So, yeah.
You were all in. You were like, I'm going to school here. I'm immersing myself. Amazing.
Yeah, I remember I painted on my wall, I'm going to SCAD. That's how I told my parents. Like, this is how I'm going to go to SCAD. Of course, I mean, it was hard, like having your child move across like thousands of miles, and they had never been to the U.S. before, and all of that. It took a little bit of convincing, but they eventually agreed to me, and I got a scholarship as well, partial, not full, but that helped as well. And just like, I'm gonna do this is my dream.
I love it. Do you feel like did SCAD sort of live up to those expectations? Like, did what you were expecting in school for animation, was that what you got? Did you get more than you expected? What was that college experience like, especially being sort of an international student coming to the U.S.?
For me, anything was more than I expected, because I mean, it's almost, I mean, coming from a different country, like I didn't have those opportunities. So me coming in, my mindset was, this is amazing. I'm getting to learn what I need to learn, and I had the best experience there. It really it really did help me spread my wings and learn about myself as an artist, but also as a human being. And being just such an international college, you meet people from all over the world. It just expands your horizons in all different ways. So
I
that was
love
great.
that.
And all the professors were like, well, most of them, I wouldn't say all, but like I think there were really amazing professors that helped guide me through the process. And honestly, college really is like what you make of it. I feel like everyone has the experience that they make of it. And so SCAD really gave you the tools to explore, and then you do what you do with that and
I love
take
that.
it out in the world.
You're a great case study for the university. They're going to see this video and want a copy of it because of all these are amazing things. But you're right, though. I think when you find good mentors that can help support you and guide you, I look back at my time at NC State University, and it sounds very similar to how you look back at SCAD. It's like you get out of it what you put in. So if there's any students listening to this interview we're talking about, it's lean in, talk to your professors, get to know them, ask people around you for that assistance and support, because it seems like that sets you up on a great trajectory and, of course, eventually in starting your own company with little labs.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I also SCAD more so than a lot of the other colleges that I have noticed, and interacting with other folks now having worked in the industry, just like having those conversations. Like we did have like classes where you're like working on your portfolio, working on your review. You have those conversations pretty early on. So you can, you're learning all the foundations and basics. I did my undergrad, not my postgrad at SCAD. And so a lot of it is just foundations. But, at some point, teachers and the professors do start talking to you about, well, how do you want to apply this in the professional world? And those conversations really helped me figure out where I need to be.
I love it. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, I don't want to spoil too much from the actual presentation at Dash Bash this summer, so I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Little Labs exists. You guys are crushing it. You make some amazing work. In my opinion, it's some of the best that is out there in our space. What I'm really curious about is something that I've personally struggled with, and I want to know if you've navigated that, and it's being the business owner and less of the creative. How have you navigated this shift that I'm sure you're navigating from like the person who's making this stuff to doing this stuff to now being the entrepreneur? What's that been like?
It's been a journey. I think when we started off, it was, myself and my partner, Camila, who started the studio. We were doing everything. And it's been a journey, like starting to delegate and hand off those things because those are not sustainable eventually. And I've sort of embraced this role of now my role at the studio is different. I'm the creative director and also the business owner, and I delegate everything else. So I am managing people a lot more than I used to. And I actually now embrace it and love it because that's my genius, and that's where I'm at in my career at the moment. And my role is more to guide everybody and help them create the best work. And so that's just what I've embraced, and I feel like probably you have as well. Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because I think at a foundational level, once you are a designer and a creative, you are just naturally built around this idea of problem solving. And all you're doing when you're running a company is essentially trying to solve problems in creative ways. And so it's different problems, right? So you got these teams that need this information and you're trying to, get them the right direction, say the right things to get them in the right place.
Yeah.
Quick question for you with Camilo, your partner. Have you all always been collaborators? Have you always kind of worked together and this was a natural extension in starting the studio, or how did that all kind of come to fruition?
So it's kind of cliche, like to meet your life partner at work in this industry because you work so much, but that's how we actually met. We met at Disney while I was working at Disney. And so we were always sort of working together in a sense. And then what sparked the Little Labs was we would start collaborating outside of work on things just, we're having fun with, because, at work you do the work that you're told to do.
Right.
And so you go home and explore. And so that just sparked our collaboration efforts outside of the Disney work environment. And it's just been and grew into what the Little Labs is today.
How fun. I love that. Well, it's the natural progression, right?
Yeah.
So you're working together all the time. It's like, well, we might as well just be partners then as well, too.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's right.
And not with everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, with the labs part, what's interesting to me is you have your day-to-day job at Disney. You kind of have this labs piece where you all are collaborating on the side. Is their intentionality in calling Little Labs? I mean, is that an extension from that, It
is, yeah. So the part little came from, we were working at large companies and corporations before, and this was our space to be little and small, and we loved that. Like, that's us. And then the labs part was us experimenting outside of our day to day, and that just spinballed into the little labs, and that and it is in a sense of who we are now as a team, as we've grown as well. We're always experimenting, always pushing our boundaries as a team and being playful, and that's where the roots of the name come
Oh,
in.
I love it. It's so fun. I'm always curious from folks who are, creatives in house that then end up moving into starting their own agency or studio. Was there like a signature event or a project? I'm always curious, like when was it like, oh, this is maybe a little bit more than just a side project. Like maybe this is something we want to do full time.
With us, it was sort of like we took the leap, honestly.
Yeah, nice.
It was sort of like we just jumped off not knowing if we have a parachute or not. And
I love that analogy. That's great.
We did. I mean, thankful that we ended up having a parachute. We were able to keep Disney as a client for us when we left the company. But we honestly were just ready to go on figure out our new path. We sort of like had reached our goal, dream. Like we worked at Disney, and it was like, what's next? What is the next challenge? We were young enough, I guess, and naive enough to like take
we can
that
do it,
leap.
right? Not thinking about all the other pieces to it.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
That's so fun. I feel like, I would echo that same sentiment. When we started Dash, we were both young in our 20s and probably we're not thinking about all the other pieces that come with it. But let's say for someone who is, let's say there's a listener out there who has, been working somewhere, or they've been freelancing, and the idea of a studio or starting this collective sounds really, really good to them. What's a piece of advice that you might give them, either based on something you've learned now you wish you could have done or something you're really proud of? What would you share for someone thinking about starting their own shop?
I think making sure that you have the resources to delegate. I think that was like a biggest learning for us on our site, that we started to burn out pretty quickly trying to tackle everything ourselves, whether it's financial resources or just people you can lean into and ask questions. We didn't think that through when we started off. We ended up, it was almost like, we have a fire, we need to find somebody to talk to about this. And so perhaps if you have like a network of people you can lean into to kind of help you troubleshoot, or whether it's consultants or things like that. And then of course, like a client base, like knowing that, you have some sort of confidence in a client base, like you have maybe had conversations with before you jump in, that could be helpful. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I look back and, there was definitely the jump in and commitment similar to you all and how we started, but we did have some work that we brought into it. Like we were kind of moonlighting on the side. We had something similar to like the little labs where we were doing some stuff work on the side. So it wasn't jumping into nothing. So I think that's important. You also hit on something else that I just, profoundly believe in is mentorship. It's close friends in the space who have navigated it. I think there's always a bit of a question mark on, how do I find a mentor? How do I meet some of these other people? Did you go to a bunch of events? Like, how did you start to network and get to know folks who you had some of these tougher questions to ask?
I wish I had a good answer. I would have gone to that. I wish Dash Bash was there and I could have gone to that, right? Yeah. For us, it was slightly different because we were actually leaving a different industry and coming into motion design with this sort of like move. We were in the animation and interactive space. And so we really did just jump off the cliff hoping we'll land into a parachute. We were like sort of freelancing a little bit with studios in the LA area. So we had some of a network,
cool,
and that's sort of, we were able to build off of that. But definitely I would recommend like networking in events and going to some of those either in your local community or area, or conferences like Dash, attending those.
I think, it's interesting because I remember when I was getting out of school and I would imagine maybe, you felt the same way. We were kind of intimidated. It's a big industry. Like, where do I even begin with this? And what I have learned in talking to folks like you and other creatives is just how welcoming everyone really is. And I think 100%. A lot of artists just don't recognize right away. Just if you reach out, there's a good chance that someone could respond to you. So in that lens, I'm always curious, just, who are some of the various artists that inspire you? Who's inspired Little Labs over the years? Who are folks that you still are enamored by their work on day in, day out?
Oh, that's such a hard question because I feel like, we're all inspiring each other all the time. And so there were definitely Yeah House was a studio back.
Well, yeah, up in
mean,
Michigan, right?
Michigan, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they were also husband and wife too, and so they always inspired us to take the leap. And we actually reached out to them. And Camila was more connected to Michelle at the time as well, and we kind of were able to ask them questions and help us out, and they were super inspiring to us over time. I mean, almost like everybody, even the work I see now,
Yeah.
inspires me a lot on just on an all-time base. Like any artist, like who's like following their path, being truthful to who they are, always inspires me. So looking back historically, like Frida Kahlo, Mary Blair, like those artists are always very empowering and inspiring for me.
What's funny is I think I actually reached out to Michelle at Yeah House at one point too. I was randomly up in Romeo, which is a small town just north of Detroit, and they're close by to it. I forget the exact name of where they are, but they're up near there. And I was like, "Hey, Michelle, I'm in town. I'd love to come see your studio." And I don't know if they've ever had someone like properly come visit their studio, so we tried to make it happen. Didn't quite work out, but they make some amazing work and are just the nicest people in the world.
They are so nice, and we've just had a friendship. We actually never met in person to this day, and just
that's so funny.
We haven't had the opportunity. We either like missed each other or couldn't make it work. But one day, yeah.
One day, I know it's funny for anyone that's like not in our industry when they're like, "Oh, you're gonna go hang out with your internet friends." It's like, look, I promise they're really cool. I may not have met them in person,
and
but
they always are. I mean, it hasn't like disappointed me. So yeah,
100%. I think one thing that you've definitely recognized probably as being a studio owner, and I have as well, is just our industry is kind of a wild, uncertain place. The longer you're in it, the more you can kind of see the volatile swings, the ups and downs. I would imagine you've got some pretty good stories from over the years. I'm always curious on a good industry story, whether it was like a crazy project you finished, you didn't know you were going to be able to get done, or stuff that went totally off the rails. Do you have a good industry story you could share with folks today?
Yeah, I have plenty, but I'll stick to this one
without
naming names.
We had this. Sounds good.
One client several years ago, right when we were just starting out, and they wanted like all this stuff from us. We built, they were launching this new brand, so we did a bunch of branding work, character work, even like toy design. We were just starting off as a studio, and contracts were not, we weren't like masters of contracts, but because a colleague had recommended us, we sort of slipped on kind of getting the contracts really signed off, because they were kind of skirting the issue. They're like, "Oh, we'll get it done," and they're like, business is always done with the handshake, and which it is, but it was one of those moments which, looking back, I'm like, why did we go through with this? But because they were highly recommended by a colleague we trusted, we went ahead and did all this work, delivered it, and when it came time to payment, they were like, "Well, you didn't really meet our expectations."
No.
And all throughout, we got all this good feedback. Thankfully, we had all of the emails and things to kind of prove that there wasn't a miss, because there wasn't really a miss or ever communicated to us that we had not met their expectations.
Right.
It all ended up sorting out at the end, but it was a huge learning for us to make sure you have your contracts and stuff all in a row. So it's a little bit our fault, but also, you do kind of come into these situations sometimes where clients want to start a project without signing off a contract. And it's like, as a business owner, you have to make those decisions of how soon, how do you make that?
100%. Like, even as you're telling the story right now, I'm sitting here thinking about one of our early missteps was the same deal. It was like, didn't quite have everything outlined in the contract, had a client that really didn't want to pay us at the end. I think the way that we finally got paid, I'm not proud of this, but I basically called this person every day and was leaving messages that I'm going to call you every day until you pay this. And I think we negotiated a 70% payment or something like that. I was like, look, if you pay 70%, I'll never call you or talk to you ever again.
Right. Yeah.
So,
just chasing clients to pay.
Yeah. And I think it's also a good reminder, though, too, is like, even in the lens of the story, y'all were doing everything right. You were doing everything by the books for the most part. You glazed over this little piece, and there was still kind of a little bit of a friction point. And I think that's a good reminder for creatives out there that if you're ever feeling like, golly, it's what did I do wrong? A lot of times you are doing it right. And sometimes this stuff just bubbles up, right?
Percent. And a lot of times you're working with clients who are not maybe in the industry and know how things are done. And a lot of it becomes having the confidence to educate, or like setting your ground on what are your boundaries. And
this opens the door to a good question, I think, is how do you and Camilo react, or how do you handle a situation that maybe feels tense? Like, if something comes up and the client's like, I don't know, maybe they're unhappy about something or something was miscommunicated, but you can tell there's those moments every now and then where it's like, ooh, this doesn't quite feel right. Do y'all have like a playbook or something that y'all do when those situations arise? What's kind of like your go-to solve for kind of easing some of that burden?
Usually it's like taking a breath and just hopping on a call and just laying things out, leaning into our producer as well and like helping them come in. So we're really coming in as a team to service the client at the end of the day and provide the best solution. So we always start with that and we lay out that, we're here to do great work. We're here to navigate this together. And we always look at our clients as collaborators. So that's really the mindset we go into with every meeting. And so as friction comes up or there's misunderstandings, we always approach the conversation with that mindset. And so far, our clients are usually very receptive to that because you're wanting to work together, honestly.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I love that so much. I mean, it really is. There's kind of an age-old stereotype, I think, in creative versus clients. But really, to your point, if you think about folks as collaborators, as partners, then when there is a misunderstanding, it just becomes easier to have those conversations. So yeah, I love that a lot.
Yeah. And I'll say
go ahead.
Thing, there might be like a client that maybe is not responsive to that. And in that case, you do have to set your boundaries and be like, this is how, but we honestly, 99.9% of the times we haven't had those kind of situations because we come with that mindset. Yeah.
Which is good. And I think like there's also to the latter point you said is like, you got to put your foot down every now and then. It's, you should feel confident in the decisions you make. I think we all are sometimes a little bit hard on ourselves. Right. Wish we should have handled this differently, or we could have, in this instance of that particular example, we should have done the contract this way. One of the nice things about making these mistakes that you and I have made is that we learn from them and you never do them again, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No one's perfect. You figure it out, you kind of move forward, which is good stuff. So let me ask you this, you're coming to Raleigh later this summer. What do you think are you most excited about for the conference? Is it getting up on stage? Is it meeting other people? I'm curious to know what gets you excited about the bash.
I'm just, in the past years, I've realized the benefits of being at a networking event such as Dash and just the connections and relationships you make. So I'm really excited to meet people and hear the other speakers. Of course, I will be speaking as well, which I'm excited for. But more than anything, just every conference that I go to, I leave just feeling so inspired and empowered, and I'm looking forward to what I can learn from that experience.
I love that. And I echo that same sentiment. I think conferences are one of the few opportunities where we mentioned earlier, we get together with all our internet friends to hang out and talk shop with people who know about it, which is really good. Well, let me do this. What do you think if you're giving a pitch to someone who is unfamiliar with Little Labs and you and your work, what would the pitch be on why they should come see you at the Bash?
Sure. So my journey has been a lot about rebellion in one way or the other based on my cultural upbringing and coming to the United States and being where I'm at today. So part of my talk will be navigating that through my experience. And I'm excited to share that. I think as artists, we're all sort of rebellious in one way or the other. And I talk a little bit about how I transfer that into the work I do today. So I'm excited to share that. And yeah.
I love it. Love a good little rebellion in the art world. It's going to be great. Well, we're super excited to have you. I just want to give a quick shout out and thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Aradhana Baharano, thank you so much for the Little Labs and joining us at the Dash Bash. If you haven't gotten a ticket yet, folks, and you're listening to this, what are you doing? Dash Bash is from June 11th through 13th, 2025. It's going to be right here in my hometown of Raleigh, North Carolina. It's big enough where there's always something to do, and it's small enough where you run into folks around town, and you'll definitely run into a lot of animators and motion designers here that weekend. So if you haven't got a ticket, grab it now. Thanks so much for joining us today, Aradhana, and so excited to have you here shortly with Little Labs. It's going to be great.
Looking forward to it. Again, thank you for having me, and can't wait to see you and everybody else.
Same. Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.